I have permission to record you?
You do have my permission.
Exactly in that way, with that picture taped to your face the entire time.
It's not taped. You didn't see I kissed it and then it just sticks to the oil. Here, should I stick something else to my forehead? How about this business? Oh, might be a
Are you saying that your skin is sticky?
Well, like any person, I have oily skin, and so
My skin is never that oily.
why do I want to discuss the book-to-screen adaptation of The Wheel of Time?
Why do I not want to discuss it?
And why should either of their opinions matter compared to mine?
All of this and more on this edition of Bustin' Blockbusters.
Part of Double P Media, doublepmedia.com.
This is Spawn Center.
Welcome back to Bustin' Blockbusters. My name is Matt. I am joined by my usual two cohorts from Double P Media and from Priscilla TV1. We have Priscilla, we have Bubba with us. I welcome them to talk about something that I think we kind of avoid on most of our Wheel of Time podcasts. And that was mostly because Bubba had not read any of the books of Wheel of Time. And so we couldn't really discuss it with a framework that was fair to him. But Bubba is here to present something, an argument that he has, for the most part, enjoyed the adaptation of Wheel of Time, the first two books to the first two seasons. I have no idea what Priscilla's opinion about this is. I have my own opinions about certain things, but I think it kind of goes beyond the scope of the two books that Bubba has read. So let's just talk about this, Bubba. You have read, first of all, The Eye of the World and The Great Hunt, right? The first two books?
That's right. For listeners who've been following along on Busting Blockbuster, I hadn't read the books, and I was kind of be the TV show only viewer who would watch the episodes and break down my thoughts as somebody who had no knowledge, who was learning everything about the world from the show. Well, I got a point since season 2 ended where I needed some new audiobooks for my commutes. And I said, hey, I don't think I'll spoil myself. I'll download and listen to The Eye of the World and The Great Hunt. And I listened to them knowing, having been a show watcher only, that a lot of book people were disappointed with some of the adaptation choices. And so I was like, ooh, I can't wait. Now I can have those same thoughts. And everybody's different. Everybody's unique. But after listening to the two books, the first two books in the series, I came to an odd conclusion, maybe an odd conclusion. I think this adaptation has done a lot of things great and smart and well. There are a couple of things that maybe I would change, but for the most part, considering how vast and wide and expansive this story is, I've been really impressed now having read the first two books or listened to the two audiobooks at how well I think the show is put together. So color me impressed.
Excellent. All right. Well, Priscilla, you have read 4 of the 14 books that are out there. You've read Eye of the World, The Great Hunt, The Dragon Reborn, and The Shadow Rising. So how do you think about Bubba's statement here that after reading the two books, he's generally pleased with the way the adaptation has gone? And I think for Bubba, that includes changes as well that he's recognized, and he thought that they were for the better to make a television program. But how about you? Where are you at so far with the way the series has been adapted?
Well, I mostly agree. The first two books, there's a lot of setting things up and world building. Like the other two books that I read, you get more into character development, and the pace gets really wild by the end of the third book and the fourth book. It's like you cannot, like pump, things are happening all the time. And I think the series, if they went too hard on the first season, for instance, then they would get into problems with pacing. The second season was an improvement, in my opinion. But generally, I wouldn't put like the adaptation in this area where it's completely unfaithful, it's terrible, why did they change that? But rather, I can see why they did what they did. And like, actually, I hope that they would be a little bit bolder and actually speed things up a little bit. I understand why they didn't, but we are talking about a 14 book series that has to be condensed. And I mean, this is another, we always going to go into this thing, the new model of series adaptations, that it takes like 2 years each season, which is crazy, and I hate it. So I'm starting getting really anxious and really angry about it, because I want to see the whole story from the beginning to end, and I cannot see this happening, honestly, because how they do it.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I cannot see this happening, not due to like the book readers being lukewarm or anything, but like the logistics of it. Even if they condense everything from, let's say, 5 seasons or 6 seasons, just to catch up with the Lord of the Rings series. So they would always have this big fantasy series on Amazon going on. 1 year, Lord of Rings of Power, the other year Wheel of Time. Even if they do that, Matt, people would be like in their 40s when when they were supposed to be in their 20s, you know. Yeah, they would move on, and then they would have to hire a new cast. It's mind-blowing. Yeah.
Oh, but see, the budget will just get bigger, and they'll just CGI them as the same age that they were in season 1. And okay, so I appreciate both of your positive opinions. And as 2 people who have read, you know, at least for Priscilla, you know, almost a third of the way through the entire series, I can understand what is going on. My biggest problem with the adaptation is that some of the fan service, for those of us who have read the entire series, and I am on a reread, I'm in the middle of Winter's Heart, I think that's book 9. And the whole problem that I have is that Rafe is mining all of these things from further on books, and he's bringing them into the adaptation, I believe, is fan service, which is fun, but it also, much like George R. R. Martin has talked about how certain things have a butterfly effect on the resolution of the actual story, I think a lot of us are looking specifically at this way certain things happened with certain characters in the arc of season 2, and even the author who finished the series for Robert Jordan, Brandon Sanderson, he went on the Dusty Wheel with Matt Hatch, a great podcast, which everybody should check out on YouTube, and just completely blasted the finale. Now, I don't like the position that Brandon Sanderson put Matt Hatch in. He basically threw him under a bus while they were doing the rewatch together. But at the same time, there's a lot of opinions that Brandon had in that particular podcast, that particular presentation, that I actually totally agreed with. And I figure if I'm agreeing with the guy who finished the book series, I might have a little bit of grounds to be kind of upset with the adaptation, specifically for a character, because it's mined from a book that's even beyond where Priscilla is at. And it totally changes the course of how that event happens. And to me, that's going to present a big problem, especially when I'm reading spoilers and everything about how they're going to add that character to another storyline, which he was never part of in the books. And they're going to basically combine, and this is smart, they're basically going to combine 2 different locations into one story. At the same time, it completely destroys that character's motivations, his discoveries.
So it's a man, his.
I did spoil that, didn't I? I should have said there. That's my bad.
No problem. Continue.
And it kind of hurt me, because there's a whole other story that is very interesting that appears to be just completely abandoned. There's no way to work it back into the story that I can see. And again, I am placing personal preferences on what I would like to see adapted and what I would not like to see adapted.
Sure.
But it makes me negative when all of it could have just been kind of avoided, except for the fact that Rafe just wanted to do fan service. And that hurts me a little bit. So that's my reasoning, and I'm expecting Bubba to be able to convince me otherwise, that I should be more positive about it. I'm expecting Priscilla also evidently to be more positive, but I would like to hear from you as well. We're on YouTube, on the Double P Media YouTube channel, youtube.com/@double, the letter P, the word media. Please leave comments on our videos. Also, Bubba's looking to get to 10,000 subscribers. I'm going to help him. Here's how I'm going to do it. If you subscribe and we get to 10,000 subscribers on the Double P Media YouTube channel, Bubba will do an a cappella rendition of the Only Murders in the Building theme.
Okay, sure.
And I will assist him with that.
Okay,
I will produce
Wow.
the production for him, and add some of my own voices to it, and he can put it up, and you can laugh at both of us for doing this. But we're gonna do
Wait,
that.
what's that song from the Wheel of Time season 1 that they kind of sang on horseback or something? What's that song? I'll do that.
The Manetheren song. Yeah, there are some excellent recordings of it out there, by the way. Not the version that they did on the show, but different versions that are considered kind of the canon versions of them. But yes, Weep for Manetheren. That's a great song. Do you want to do that one instead? Do you want to risk it?
Listen,
I mean, I know
love
the thing is we've got to get to
so let's do it.
10,000 subscribers, people.
Let's do it.
Because Priscilla is now demanding too much money. He has to have additional money to pay her. She's demanding that she makes twice as much as I do. And you all know how much I make. And that's not a complaint. I've never wanted money. But Bubba does. And so get him to 10,000 subscribers by December 31st, 2024. And I will make sure that a video is produced of him doing Only Murders in the Building and Weep for Manetheren as a mashup. How about that?
Wow. Yeah.
Just change the stipulation right in the middle of it. Bubba's not happy with me at all right now, but I'm going to make Bubba happy and give him because he doesn't want to sing.
I thought he was like
he's a rock star.
A singer, yeah. Like he did this for the third season of Only Murders in the Beauty. He did like one song.
Yeah.
Well, he did. Which of the triplets did it? He even tried to get me to do a score for it, and I told him no way. Do it. Just use the karaoke.
What
version.
support we have? All right. So, Matt, let me ask you, as a newfound Wheel of Time book reader, I've read these first, or once again, I'm saying I listened to the audiobooks.
You read them. I consider listening to them as reading.
Where in the rankings of all 14 would you put these first two books? Would you say they're in the top half, top third, top 5? Or are these first two books, you've read all 14, somewhere else? Where would you rank them kind of in the 14 books that I have, or I guess the remaining 12 books I have to read?
I can tell you it's not in my top 5. I don't know where else to put it in the ranking of all 14 of them. That would be a whole different podcast, I think.
Well, okay, I'm excited. After season 3, I assume then I can read 2 more, probably books 3 and 4 based on your guesstimation. But we'll decide that after we see season 3 on Amazon Prime.
Right on.
All right, so Matt, do you want me to get in as, once again, somebody who approached this the complete wrong way of watching the show and then reading the books?
Hey, don't knock that. That's how I did Game of Thrones the first 2 seasons.
Oh, well, there you go. Okay, well, I'll jump in and I'll say that the big thing about the first book, and admittedly I kind of knew the story because I'd watched the show, is that first book, I think, Priscilla, you mentioned this as well. The first book, The Eye of the World, you can tell as you're listening to it. I think even if I hadn't seen the show, I could tell as I was listening to it that this has a whole lot of setup. They are setting up things that are never going to be touched upon in the first book. And now that I see the giant scope of this series, I imagine there are a lot of things set up in that first book that may not get paid off for 6, 7, 8 books later. I mean, they are really, there are all sorts of facts and information, and it kind of makes the first book, it's not going to say it's a bad book, but it kind of stalls the momentum sometimes in the first book when you really want to kind of have a kind of a fast-paced rush to the end. So I'd give the first book probably 3.5 stars out of 5. And the main thing I thought about the show was the show gets on with it. The show removes a lot of stuff or moves through certain beats quicker, but I thought it was for the best. So, for example, in that first book, I was real shocked that suddenly we have a big interlude with the Princess Elayne. I hope she's a princess, whatever her title is, with Rand talking to her and her brother in this whole scenario there. And I thought, oh, wow, they really set her up here in the first book as a character, even though she really doesn't do much of anything for the story. And so I thought, boy, it was smart of the show not to introduce her until she had more of a role to play. Do you guys agree with that? Or did you want to see Elayne in the first season?
Oh, I completely agree. There's no reason to cast somebody for an episode and then have them return for, an entire season and many seasons to come. I think I completely agree with that notion. Priscilla, how about you?
I think I agree too. And it has to do with the whole Rand and his romances, because to me as a reader, like the first book, like Elayne was so immediately smitten with him.
Oh, yes.
And she carries this, and this annoys me. But then I have to remind myself that they are teenagers all the time, because this is how they roll in the books, apparently, at least in the books that I read. They get these crushes, and the crushes, they develop into these full-blown relationships without much them having to do with each other, because they are constantly going to one place to the other. They are constantly being separated. This group of friends and the people they have relations and alliances with each other, they don't keep united in a united front. They're like, somebody's going to this place, somebody's going to that place. There is like people staying at Tavalon to learn, and they keep carrying these crushes wherever they go. And however they change, the status of the crush changed too. So we are not going to spoilers here, but needless to say, Elayne meets him, Rand, in book 1, and it takes like a couple of books of this crush to develop into, I want a full-blown relationship with this man. And they didn't meet. They didn't even meet into this between the first meeting and the time that Elayne decides that she's completely in love with Rand, and that's the man she wants. And I'm like,
yeah,
they're teenagers. Yeah. I get it. I get it. But it's like, so in this sense, yes, I really like they put Elayne there at the time where in the series, in the TV series, where Rand and Egwene are clearly going their separate ways, and then you have the meeting, and I agree with that. I really agree with that. And I think it also has to do, Matt, with the fact that they are supposedly older in the TV series, which is another change that we can also discuss.
Right. And one of the things that I wanted to point out, and where I think that Bubba is correct in this, and Priscilla, to your point about, the whole crush thing, you can say in that last scene in the finale, or not quite last scene in the finale, where they meet
of season 2,
of season 2, you can see how that attraction is there immediately.
Mm-hmm.
They did really good on portraying that, right? So this is, now Bubba knows that there's kind of a crush thing going on back and forth here since we've done that.
Oh,
but I think they've laid the groundwork for that very well at the end of season 2, so that they can go whatever direction they're going to go with it. I mean, obviously, Priscilla, you're right. Rand being with Selene / Lanfear for the first half of season 2. Which I'm sure Bubba will want to discuss that in relation to the books. But it's, you know, that was a great indication of how much Rand had kind of moved on, even though they kind of brought it back home in at the end of season 2, where he felt like he had to save her, that he cared about her and he had to save her. I'm not sure how they're going to deal with all of the weird things that happen with younger kids, trading around boyfriends and girlfriends like in junior high. I don't know how they're going to do that in the show. I hope that they settle that matter pretty quickly, because there's another character that we've already met that throws another cog in the wheel. Actually, there's 2 characters that we've already met that throws other cogs in the wheel.
I would add that two characters. I would add, that are already there.
Well, let me jump back in and say that I didn't intend to discuss this now, but everybody in these first 2 books who meets Rand has a crush on him. Min in the show, her and Rand's, crushing didn't really come through, but you read the book, to me, Min has a crush on Rand too. So
absolutely,
really crazy. Let me continue on with things, adaptation choices.
Can I just address that for just a second, though? And this is something that, again, comes from later books that I believe that Rafe is trying to throw in, and not necessarily, he hasn't done this part of it, but I'm betting that he will. There is and you've heard Moiraine use it in the television show, a word called ta'veren. And what ta'veren does is they affect the pattern around them. And in some ways, that's attraction. In some ways, that causes all kinds of weird things to happen, as Priscilla has read in book 3. And because of that, it doesn't necessarily turn me off in the books by the fact that all of these girls seem to fawn over Rand, because he's ta'veren. He doesn't even know he's doing it, but it's just that kind of attraction because the pattern is affected around him.
Well, thank you for telling everyone that I'm ta'veren, Matt. That explains it.
You are. You are.
So I want to keep going through things that I liked that the show did with the first book. Now, if your favorite character is Elayne, maybe you're upset that she wasn't in the first season. Again, we want to hear your comments. If you're watching on YouTube, go down in the comments, let us know. Otherwise, reach out to Bustin' Blockbuster's social media chapters and pages and let us know what you think. So Elayne, I like her as a character. I liked her a lot in the season 2 of the show, but I think it was smart to remove her. They also remove a whole bunch of towns and cities. Not only is that smart for a budgeting perspective, about in the first book, they feel like they go to a bunch of towns, a bunch of little cities. And the fact that, hey, we just go past that to the White Tower and then out to the Blight in the Eye of the World. I thought that was so smart. Now, Matt, you and I and Priscilla, going through season 1, I remember you always talking about how you really liked the character of Tom Maryland. And to me, that first season really chopped him up. And you saying, oh, I really like Tom Maryland, and then he appeared, it feels like a blink, he was there and then he was gone in the first season. I was like, boy, how did you get attached to this character? Reading the book, I could understand. And reading the second book, I could understand the why people would like this character. But again, I think it was, dare I say, on the real story of the first season and the first book, Tom Maryland's a bit of fat. He's a bit of flavoring. You need just a little bit of him, and then you've got to get on with the story. So I thought that was real smart. In the first book, another thing that I love that they exercised, even though in the show in season 2, you begin to maybe understand it a bit, and certainly reading the second book, understand it a little bit. But there's whole thing about the boat captain and the boat, and the fact that it got removed from the first season, even though it's there in the first book. Once again, I thought it was smart. They were trying to, get a more linear story than the story in the book, which has so many branches going off in all directions. They're just trying to get a straight stick to get us to the Eye of the World in the next beat of the story. So I thought a lot of it was really, really smart.
I agree, Priscilla, and I'll tell you why in a minute, but I want to give Priscilla a chance to comment on this first.
Sure.
Yeah, I feel the same, but basically, I missed the whole flavor of having him being more of a mentor to, especially Matt and Rand, because I really like the passages. But as you said, I think they opted to a more linear path, and in this linear path, all the whole subplot of them, their travels had to be condensed. I had wished actually that they had kept the Glee man aspect of Tom Merrilin more, because we just saw him singing once,
and everybody swooned.
Yeah, but I have nothing but respect for the choice in actor. He's really hot, and
like I said,
hotter than he was, hotter than he was in the books. So it's a positive.
He's hot in the books. How do you think he gets that girl in book 2?
He's constantly being described as an old man, and people, even though he's an old man, and people do fall in love with him, which is, I mean,
well,
I don't know. Maybe they have some appeal.
Matt, you got to some spoilers. You got to some spoilers. Admittedly, your reaction to him in season 1 of the show made me think he wasn't dead, but the show kind of implied he was dead. Spoiler alert. He does appear in book 2, and you learn a whole lot more about him. And I don't want to spoil anybody who maybe just has only seen the first 2 seasons or read the first 2 books, hopefully. But yeah, again, I just think in this story with so many branches, I thought we got a taste of him and we moved on. And if he comes back on the show, which I suspect he will, I think that'll be a fun little reveal that, hey, Tom Merrilin didn't get faded.
Yeah. And that's a reveal that actually, if I recall right, and it's been a while since I've read Eye of the World, but isn't that result, is it not until I guess maybe it's not until book 2 that you find out that Tom's still alive?
Right. There are hints in book 1.
2.
And there's hints in book 1. Yeah.
There are hints in book 1 because it was like he was standing behind to fight that fade. And then they hear kind of stories that make you think Tom Merrilin didn't get, as I like to call, faded. But it's not really till book 2 where you're like, okay, this guy did not.
It's book
there
2,
he is.
yeah.
He's right there in book 2.
Right.
And it's further spoiler, the actor who everybody loves and swoons over, and the character who I think everybody should love and swoon over, will be returning in season 3, just so you know. So we have discussed how, hopefully we gave you enough spoiler warning, but he will be back. I want to say this, and this is kind of in regards to Priscilla's comment about the whole Gleeman aspect. I don't mind. I don't need to see Matt learn how to juggle. I don't need to see Rand learn how to play a lute. I don't need to see them entertaining people in a tavern. All of that to me was stuff that could easily be dismissed, and they went to the guts of it. One thing that you'll note, which you also learn in books beyond where you guys have read, but did you notice how in season 1, and again, this is stuff Rafe pulling forward, how Tom Merrilin seemed to know so much about the Aiel culture as Matt and him were burying that Aiel. That's kind of a significant thing about the whole Aiel culture itself in regards to Gleeman. And I'll just say that. I won't say anything
Interesting.
more. But those kind of nods are cool, as long as they don't butterfly out into things that make the story where that's important seem meaningless. And I don't know if these kinds of things are rushes to get things in, not only to keep book readers interested, but also just to make sure, right now Amazon's saying we're going to wait till season 3 comes out before we greenlight season 4. That's a normal studio thing these days. That's not abnormal anymore. But it's got a lot of content providers about Wheel of Time a little worried because the ratings for Wheel of Time have increased a little bit, but the completion rates and all of this kind of thing that Amazon seems to really look at, not so much. And so people are worried, probably not justifiably so, but they're worried about the continuation of this series after season 3. From what I've read about what was filmed for season 3, I believe there's not going to be any issue after season 3 airs. I believe it's going to catapult quite a bit. because it sounds like it's just bonkers. And I love that because book 4, Priscilla, as you know, is bonkers. So it's crazy. So, you know,
I kind of prefer book 3, but book 4 is also like stakes are getting high. Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah.
Let me finish up with kind of the final 2 points about things I like in the adaptation choice of taking the first book and putting it into the first series. The first one is, I'm pretty sure in the first book, we really don't get to the White Tower, even spend a lot of time in the White Tower. I think the show was really smart to go ahead and get to it. That is obviously an important location. There's so much that's going to happen to it. And so getting the audience who hadn't read the books, like me at the time, familiar with that location, smart, brilliant, wonderful. And then this one, I think, is a controversial one, because I'm pretty sure I heard that author, Brandon Sanderson, hated this choice. But I go back to Perrin in the very first episode accidentally killing a wife, which he didn't have in the book. And he didn't accidentally kill anybody in the book, from what I remember. And to me, it was kind of like a hook. It was like a thing that when I watched the first episode, as somebody who hadn't read the books, I was like, oh, wow, this is fascinating. Oh, wow, what a twist that you never see in a fantasy show like this. Like Legolas did not accidentally fire an arrow and kill a dwarf, right? Like these things don't happen. And so the fact they added it, as a show watcher, I really liked it. Through the first 2 books, I can almost say, well, that doesn't seem to, this guilt they tried to give him, it doesn't really, to me, pay off or correlate to anything in the first 2 books. But in some ways, I even kind of like that, because Perrin, at least in the first 2 books, he's really not in it that much. He and Matt are very much side characters. And so the fact that they're trying to beef up the characters of what I assume is Matt and Perrin on the show, I thought was a smart move. And so again, I know that's a controversial one, but I think actually him having some guilt and accidentally killing somebody and, complicated feelings, I think it made him a more well-rounded character on the show than he is in the books. I'm ready for all the slings and arrows if you guys or any of our listeners want to send them, but that was my thought. What do you guys think?
Bubba, I want to say this, and to be perfectly honest, I see that fact as being totally inconsequential to Perrin's character arc. But it does, I agree with you, it invests you in him immediately. And I think that was important. And I think that was a smart TV show move. Now, people are going to, who have read the entire series, are going to say, yeah, but then this happens later on and this happens later on, and it doesn't make much sense. And there's a character that we're going to meet in season 3 that we'll see how that is handled. That's almost a wait to see for me, to see how all of this plays out. But I feel like that while being really inconsequential to the story arc, was very investing in the character. And he tried to play that up all throughout season 1, a little bit in season 2, not a whole lot, but a little bit in season 2. And to see that kind of wear away actually encourages me. As Perrin stops looking at blaming himself for what happened to his wife and starts to take like the wolf power into his own hand. And it didn't bother me that, because you've read the first 2 books, it didn't bother me that they waited till season 2 to have Perrin's involvement with Elias either, and to learn about, the wolf brother thing at that time. I felt like that was a smart choice. You don't need the whole idea for Perrin and Egwene when they're running from Shadar Logoth is, there's lots of time in a book where you can spend where they meet this guy and he helps them out, and then they meet the Tuatharon. But if you're going to, it was very smart to take that guy, bring him into season 2 as the tracker for the Hunter of the Horn, and have him and Perrin have those interactions when essentially, mostly on the road, Perrin doesn't do much in book 2. So give him something to do to continue to invest him in this character. I thought that was very smart. I agree with you. Priscilla, any thoughts?
Well, as a woman, I don't like the idea of reading a character because to give like
okay, good point.
A guy some sorrow, and I tend to think that it was actually inconsequential inconsequential to Perrin. So I try not to judge much because I'm not doing an adaptation. And I think it was an easy way for them to try to get Perrin's story a little richer, a little, because otherwise he would just be like a blacksmith on the two rivers, in Emmonsfield, that happens to be friends with Rand. And they gave also a backstory to Matt, that Matt came from this very troubled family background. So I can question why it had to be a wife. Maybe it could be like his father's. Maybe he could be, I don't know, maybe he could have killed by accident his mentor. But anyway,
Yeah, I get that.
It was.
I understand that.
I think it was his wife because of the Egwene angle, mostly, and also because it's like the laziest and the cheapest way that you can get this story told.
It was a cheap investment opportunity. You're right.
Yeah, as a first-time reader, when I was reading, and I was engaging with the fandom and asking questions about it, I kept bringing this up, and even before the series was on, when we were just discussing the trailers and what it was dropping, and I kept asking people, does Perrin have a crush on Egwene? Because that's what I got from my reading.
Yeah.
And everybody in the fandom, I cannot tell you one person in the fandom that told me, yes, it's true, he has a crush on it. So when I saw on the series, I was like, okay, so Rafe, he's one of mine. So he saw something there, and he tried to get it out and put some drama there, and I don't think he was entirely successful. That's what I say. But I appreciate that I was right, apparently. So
good work. You're always right.
Yeah, I was going to say, when have you ever been wrong?
Okay, let me jump in. Let me jump in and talk about the adaptation choices that I'm not going to say I hated, but I think were maybe less successful. And I'll go to this one because Priscilla's kind of already brought it up too. Personally, if this was me in charge, and certainly in hindsight, I'm doing this when read the first book and watching the first series, I would have kept the characters younger. I would have cast younger. Mm-hmm. You know, how much younger? Forget age. I would have cast them so they looked more like they were high school seniors. You know, sometimes you can cast an actor who's 25, but he looks like a high school senior. I would have done that because in the books, it is obvious, as Priscilla said, these are teenagers. These are people who haven't matured to adulthood. And I think seeing them that way in the first season, it would have played differently. I think it would have, the stakes would have been even higher because you would have been fearful. Like you look at Perrin and Rand and those guys, they look buff. They look like they could punch a Trolloc. Where maybe if you have actual teenagers, I think the stakes stay up. I think another thing that I kind of think they should have done is that I always joke now in hindsight that when I watched the first couple episodes, I thought, oh, I know what this show is about. This show is about Egwene. And then later it's like, oh, Rand is the chosen / cursed one. And so I think I would have kept them, at least cast actors who looked like, 18 years old. I would have certainly given a bit more focus in that first season to Rand. And dare I say it, the final thing about the first season is I think the end of the first season isn't quite as clean in understandableness. That's not a word. It's easier to understand exactly what happens at the end of the first book reading it. Where at the end of the first season, I think I kind of sort of understood what was happening, but it was really you, Priscilla, and you, Matt, who kind of walked me through exactly what was going on at the end of the first season. So those are the three choices that I think they kind of could have improved on, just having read the book in hindsight, saying, oh, maybe they should have done this. But those were the ones that stuck out at me.
Yeah, okay. The first thing, Bubba, I'm going to say about your investment in Egwene being the Dragon Reborn is that was the mystery box thing that Amazon seemingly addresses with every show. It seems like, I'm betting there's a studio note for every show. Hey, can you make a mystery for us to solve? And in the books, in book 1, it is clear to everyone, after a couple of chapters, that Rand is the Dragon Reborn, and you can just go on from there.
Right.
But
and it's
create
almost
a
just
mystery,
because the focus is so much on him. Like, forgive me, Robert Jordan, this first book is really told from Rand's perspective.
Right.
And so that's why Matt and Perrin, I think the show did create these things and did fridge Perrin's wife, which, Priscilla, you've convinced me, was the wrong choice. I'm glad they gave him something, but I wish they had given him something else. And so, you know, I think the show should have tipped its hand more about that, its Rand more.
Yeah.
about that.
Because, and it's clear that it worked for you, because instead of using good storytelling to create a mystery, I mean, it worked in terms of creating a mystery, but it didn't work as a mystery, because instead of creating a story element that could make it a mystery, they instead just used distraction and deferral. And that made the reveal not only disappointing to me, because I already knew, of course, but it just seemed like the execution of it was not very well done. And that's on Rafe. You know, if Amazon says, we want a mystery for each one, is Rand the Dragon Reborn? Is Moiraine actually shielded, or is she stilled or shielded? These kinds of things I cannot stand. And I know they start as notes, but it's clear to me that Rafe doesn't know how to do them very well as well. And so why put that extra pressure on a showrunner who's just trying to tell a story? Priscilla, your thoughts about any of Bubba's stuff with the, because I've rattled for too long, but his thinking that, you know, there were some things that they could have done better.
Well, I really approve of the change of aging the characters, actually.
Oh.
And I tell you why. I think it's a matter of the target audience that they were trying to sell the series to. There has been an effort, at least from my understanding, not to make the series a young adult thing, because I think Robert Jordan was actually writing from a young to teenage, like for teenagers at least at heart, in mind. So, but when they bought the rights to Amazon need. Yeah, that's what I think. I don't know. I think the series, like the scope of the series, obviously grown. Like also like his ambitions for the series grown, but it started as a regular series of books. I think his initial plan was a trilogy. I don't know, but anyway, it started like, okay, it will be a book. It will be a series of book that it has this coming from war veteran, and then it migrated that the veteran actually has a son, and the series will actually follow the son. So he had this whole feeling about it being directed towards a more masculine, a more younger audience. So when they put when Amazon bought the rights, I think they wanted actually to, one, attracted women, and two, actually sell the series as a more adult TV show, not like a new Game of Thrones. I think this is always like journalists, they always go to the laziest route of each series.
Yeah.
Fantasy series, it has to be compared, it has to be the next, and like it's different flavors. And I think also that Rafe was a very astute when trying to sell the series. In the interviews, he was saying, actually, no, actually Wheel of Time is midway You have Lord of the Rings in one from one end, and you have A Song of Ice and Fire on the other end, and Wheel of Time is more or less in the middle. So I think it's perfect. So in this sense, I'm as an adult woman, I don't want to see too much of like teenage drama, you know. I have some sort of not low tolerance, but it's like I can see because I can it reminds me when I was a teenager myself, but that's not why I am watching the series, you know.
But okay, Priscilla,
So
hang on. You just said that you love the fact that Perrin had a crush on Egwene. Was it just because you were right? Because that was the most CW storyline in all of season 1.
Yes, and I admitted that. I don't know why you're trying to create the whole problem here. I said, I just like it because it proved that I was right. That's what I said. Exactly.
But Priscilla, you're always right. So what does this one matter? It's just another tally on the chalkboard.
No, yeah, so I agree with that. And I really like that, like, Egwene and Rand already had a sexual relationship going on. So this, for me, it makes their future breakup, it will be even more complicated because it's not something that they were promised when they were children and there was like parents' expectations. No, this was something that they both wanted at some point in their lives. And now that they are on another, they've gone through transformations that will be something different that they don't want anymore. Yeah, so I really enjoy it actually, and yeah, so I'm okay with it, and I think mostly they were successful, I would say, but I don't know. I can also see that it would actually be interesting for like a part of the audience to have this sort of teenagers trying to figure out life while also trying to fight evil and save the world. So I can also see that.
Boring. Bubba, one last note on season 1.
Sure.
And you mentioned the boat and all of that stuff earlier and how you thought it was smart to cut it. Rafe made it up. He brought Bail Domon, who is that boat captain in book 1, into season 2 with the stuff for Moiraine at the beginning of the season, and even involving with Lanfear, which
at the end
was a nod to something in a much later book. So you know, that whole thing with Lanfear was about taking the seals and putting them out in the deepest part of the sea.
Yeah,
is all I'll say.
No, of course.
And but I think that to me, Bail Domon's, it'll see again. I have to see what happens in season 3. I'm still kind of a wait to see on it, but that's all I'll say regarding that.
All right, good. Finally, let's get on to the second book and some of the choices that they made, which I think, once again, were really smart. And maybe some were based around production reasons as opposed to a story choice per se. But if you remember the second book, if I remember the second book, it's really the 3 guys, Matt, Perrin, and Rand, are all on this chase for the hunt, right? They're on the hunt for the horn, where the show, all 3 are separated. In what was wonderful about having these characters not together but separated is to show the scale of the world. Like here, we made the first season a real streamlined story. The second season, it expands out, and I thought it was great having them all separate. I thought maybe this comes up later, but Moiraine's family storyline in the second season, I thought that was real interesting. And if it's in the second book, it really doesn't feel like they focus on it as much as the show does. I think Lanfear was 100 times better in the show than she was in the book, as were this Seanchan. To me, what's so funny is I'd seen the second season and I'm reading the second book thinking, oh boy, these Seanchan, they're going to be the big bads. They're going to be our villains we need to defeat here in the second book. They really don't show up as an antagonist until, I want to say, the last third of the book. They're almost non-existent in the first 60% of the book. And so that was just weird to read it in the book of like, you're getting what feels like near the end, and then suddenly there's this whole Seanchan problem they've got to solve, and you're like, well, you really weren't focused on it too much at the beginning. So I thought they were better. And finally, I thought how Egwene defeated her captivity from the Seanchan. Admittedly, I saw it first on the show than in the books, and that does play a big role. But I thought Egwene defeating them was much more of a hell yeah moment for me in the show than in the book. Of course, I saw it first, so I kind of knew she would defeat them. But to me, those are some of the great choices they made when adapting the second book for the second series.
Priscilla, your thoughts on Bubba's presentation there?
I agree on all counts, I think. Yes. The whole thing about having the characters separated, I think it's something that it will kind of repeat itself for the series. You have some sort of combinations of character going on adventures together. So the second season, we have already like the beginning of that. I really like the deep dive in Moiraine's family history, because what you get from the books is just Bartanes at this standpoint, but you if they don't share the same surname, you possibly don't even realize that they are related. And what is actually the weight of the name, and it also made the review about Bartanes, like his true allegiance, much more like a much bigger thing than it was actually in the books. In the books, he's just a guy that is like playing the game, and he is trying to figure. He's trying to figure things with Rand and Varing, and like you're not so sure what's going on because of the nature of the nobility there, because they're always playing this game. So like in the end, okay, this guy is not only playing one game, he's actually playing two, and he's going to pay for it. So I really had the timeline. It was something that annoyed me. I really loved, dramatically speaking, as I said, the introduction of Moiraine's family dynamics, but it put into question Moiraine's age in relation to her younger sister, because we saw that she was young with at the tower when the dragon was reborn, and we know that Rand cannot be older than 25 in the series, whatever. So it's like, I cannot see, and they have this whole discussion. Okay, the Aes Sedai, they are ageless, and so it made my mind turns a little bit. But anyway, dramatically speaking, it was a great win for me. And the Seanchan, yes, I completely agree. The highlight Surov, she was very annoying in the series, and I loved her, and I loved like to see her being like having her nails cut and all this drama, and like her falling from grace, and then you realizing that again she also has other allegiances there, and it was lovely.
Everything you just said, I loved having the Seanchan annoying, and I loved I loved the fact that they established the arrival of the Seanchan at the end of the first season. That was the bonus cut at the end, was them coming up with their ships. The Moiraine thing, Bubba, you've now read book 2. What does Moiraine get to do in book 2? Nothing, right? I mean, essentially, she does very, very little in the book. She does some research here and there and what have you. So they had to set up the finale of season 1 to have Moiraine, basically to give Moiraine a storyline for season 2.
Yes.
And
yes.
The fact that they did it with the mystery box thing, I'm a little disappointed in. But otherwise, yeah, you got to have your main actress. You got to give her something to do in a series. So I completely agreed with all of that. And the development of the family stuff was cool. I don't have anything else on the season 2 adaptation. Well, I have lots of things, but I can't discuss them here.
All right. Well, let me get to things I didn't like that I thought maybe they could have done better when adapting the second book for the second season. And it goes to a thing I hated as a show watcher only watching the second season, is I felt like Rand had nothing to do, and Elayne, excuse me, had nothing to do. Watching him was boring, pointless. I was like, why are we on this story? You read that second book, and
I remember that.
And admittedly, you guys kind of hinted a lot that, boy, sword play should be important. They could have had Lan, and maybe you say that's not much for the actor to do, but they could have had a season of him training Rand on sword play and like making Rand a better swordsman, and let Lan, once again, you're like, well, that's really him supporting the character Rand. It's not like Lan has his own story, but I still think that would have been more enjoyable than what we saw of Lan. So I thought that was a mistake. And then
Lan peeing wasn't interesting, Bubba?
Nothing Lan did in season 2 was interesting. But then reading the book, Padan Fain seems like a much bigger character in the book. And so there's a part of me that, having read the book and seemingly, once again, seeing how Padan Fain keeps coming up, makes me wonder if this character has kind of an important role to play later, where on the show, and especially in season 2, he's almost a blink and you miss him. So to me, those were the real 2 sticking points of where I thought, well, maybe they should have had Lan do anything else, and they could have had Lan training Rand in swordplay. And second, I thought, if Padan Fain's going to do more in the future, the show should have done something. So I don't really know if that's correct or not, but those were my impressions after reading the second book.
I look at it, if I'm Rafe, you've got to sacrifice one of 2 things. You've got to either sacrifice, if you're going to give Moiraine a storyline, then you've got to sacrifice their involvement with Rand directly. So Lan can't be with Rand because Lan has to be with Moiraine. Now you could have had them meet up a little bit earlier once Lan was with Alanna and all of them.
Well, why not just stick Moiraine? Kind of, she's on her own, but she could be close enough to Rand that Lan could do both.
Because you got to give Moiraine the storyline of deciding that she's powerless, so that you can create a mystery box, so that she separates herself from Ryan.
Yeah, but in other words, she could still do that. You don't think she could do that in the same town, like the same region? Like, listen, Lan, stay away from me. I'm going to be over here. You be over there. That city they spend a lot of season 2, and Rand spends a lot of season 2, and to me it seems big enough that they could have done it. But okay.
But
sure.
with the whole Logain thing, she is tracking him.
Right. So why couldn't she hang out there? Then
remember, in the season 1 finale, Rand said, "Everybody thinks I'm dead now. You and I are done. We've done our thing. We're done." So
yeah, but don't you think that choice was just to set up this boring ass story for Moiraine and Lan in season 2? Couldn't he have just said, let's go off on our own?
What would the storyline have been in season 2 if they had not?
Once again, Lan is training Rand, and then Moiraine is doubting her powers. Why does she have to be somewhere completely different?
Hi, Matt here with an editor's note on this particular subject. What I should have responded was the fact that the whole unraveling of the mystery box involved Rand being able to see the weave and cutting it. So the problem was the mystery box part of it, because if Rand and Moiraine were together the entire time, Rand would have seen the weave a lot faster. And then that would have been resolved, and then what would Moiraine have had to do? But of course, that's not what I said. This is what I said.
Completely different to doubt.
To give Moiraine the emotion of having to sacrifice her separation from Lan.
Yes. Yeah, right. Yeah.
And to set something up that happens much later on.
Okay, well, that I can understand. I was going to say your first argument didn't go over with this now 2-book reader.
I understand that. And I agree with most of your grievances there. Priscilla, any additional thoughts on that?
Oh, I think the Lan season 2 storyline was a missed opportunity, actually. But I think also it had to do with Rafe and his husband being one of Alana's warders. And I honestly, I'm not trying to be messy here, but I honestly think that he put Lan there with Alana and the other warders. One, to explain more about the relationship there, and perhaps establish Alana for what is to come. Because it does something come. That I understand. Right. Because it does come. Yeah, and for instance, but he extended too much. He should have done that particular storyline, Alana, Lan, the warders, in a matter of one episode or two, and then Lan goes away to find where Moiraine is, and then they get reunited, and then he can train Rand. That I would have liked more. Anyway, it hasn't gone. I agree, it was a failed storyline. Well, the thing with Padan Fain, at the point that I am in the books, he's clearly being built up to be some other sort of evil that that Rand's group has to actually face off. Moiraine, she has a talk with Perrin at some point about Padan Fain and how different his source of evil is, that he's not only a dark friend, that he's actually something else, which is very interesting. And then you go into what I believe will be the storyline of the first season in Emmonsfield but Matt has more information on that, because I'm trying to not look into the spoiler sessions. So I believe we are going to see Padan Fain do more, specifically in the Perrin storyline in this third season. But also what I heard, because I like to know what is what the future books has in store for me. So and I like the discussions in the fandom, even though I'm stuck at the fourth book for a while. I also learned that the Padan Fain promise is just Robert Jordan tried to build him up, but actually it doesn't go much beyond. So what I'm trying to say is that at this point in the series, I think they are doing with Padan Fain what they can, and I cannot judge.
But here's something that, in regards to that, I love that you said that you think that he's another kind of bad guy, and you really have to be looking for Easter eggs to find this stuff. Do you remember when Matt was discovering the dagger in Shadar Logoth, a place of great evil, that you heard Padan Fain's whistle?
Yes.
That's how we all determined that he was following them. But the truth of the matter is, that's a place of great evil. So let's concentrate on that aspect of it as we go forward in season 3 and beyond.
Anybody who whistles is evil. Okay, big spoiler.
I can't whistle. I'm not evil.
That's a shout out for my fans of The Wire. So those are my thoughts. Hey, if you've listened this far, please come at me. I understand my opinions might be radical and are certainly shaped because I watched the show before I read the book, but I want to hear your comments.
I love all of your comments, Bubba. I think that you have convinced me, despite the fact that I have read the entire series and I'm seeing things. Maybe I'm just seeing ghosts. Hopefully, I'm just seeing ghosts, and we'll get a better adaptation as we go along.
You're seeing flickers.
Flickers. Flicker.
Flicker.
What did you think about the fact that that was represented in one little scene with Matt where he saw all of his life?
That feels like, so I've read the second book, and these are second book spoilers for anybody who's listening. There is these scenes in the second book where I'm pretty sure it's Rand and Loial and somebody else, I'm forgetting who, and they're going almost through the
stone.
right through the portal stones into these other, they're sliding door worlds, right? And so if that's going to be a big thing in the end game, maybe they did need to play it up more in season 2, but
Otherwise,
otherwise I'm fine with how they did it.
all right. I mean, I really have no opinion on that either way. That's another wait to see for me because it's weird as a character development for Matt. But I feel like they trumped all of that by saying he's a hero of the Horn.
Yeah, I like that.
Which is something that is not readily available in book 2. That information.
Mm-hmm.
He just blows the horn, and the guys show up and they fight. And I don't know how many of them he actually talks to. I don't remember. It's been too long. But I thought that was a cool reveal. I'm not sure if I would have done it. Bubba, any final thoughts? Did you get anything out of this discussion other than spoilers that you enjoyed?
Well, the main thing that is missing from this discussion, listeners, is your response. I said a lot of things that I think people may agree with, may disagree with. Matt, tell them how they can tell me their thoughts.
All right. Well, you can always leave comments on our YouTube channel. That is at the word double the letter P, the word media, or maybe you can even do at deep double PHQ. I'm not sure. You can always reach out to Bubba directly regarding his opinions about the adaptation by simply sending your X posts. And I don't mean X-rated posts. I just mean X posts. Sending them to at the word double the letters PHQ. Actually, all social media. Bubba has cornered the market on that particular handle for everything except OnlyFans. And you can reach me at Bust Blockbuster. I'm not going to put any more polls out. You can always talk to Priscilla as well. Priscilla, you can leave comments on her YouTube channel as well by going to at Priscilla TV 1, and she will answer you. She's got lots of great stuff on Lord of the Rings and everything. Bubba has continued his quest for 10,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel at the word double the letter P, the word media, with some great podcasts about Only Murders in the Building, a season which I did not watch after episode 1. But you can, if you've watched it, you should see all of Bubba's clues as he does Let's Solve Only Murders in the Building. Also another series, Let's Solve, not Magpie Murders, is it Moonflower Murders?
That's correct, Matt.
So he's done that, which is the sequel to Magpie Murders, which he also did on. Go back and do all that. Hit that subscribe button. He needs 10,000 subscribers because he needs to pay Priscilla double what he pays me.